Okay, it worked. There we go. Yeah. So Matthew chapter 2. I don't remember what every chapter is. I don't review these chapters before the stream. I kind of want to approach it fresh and not like pre-thought of. And so then as things hit me, I'll talk about that rather than trying to come in with like a pre-baked message or something like that. I don't want to do that. I want to like kind of study it and give my impressions and answer any questions that y'all might have as we go along. So anyways, Matthew chapter 2, based on like the first line, we're continuing the Christmas story, the birth of Jesus. I don't know. Okay, yeah. So basically, we're finishing the Christmas story and the birth of Jesus. So there you go. Um, and yeah, it'll be interesting. If I recall correctly, and I could be forgetting something, but Matthew is the one that has the most detailed version of the Christmas story. Um, I imagine he probably actually talked to Mary about it, or maybe Mary talked about this to him um, at some point, before he wrote the gospel. Uh, because if I recall correctly, there's a line that says Mary treasured these things in her heart, um, which suggests that she kind of kept it to herself, internalized it, um, and so Matthew, whether he asked or whether they were just talking together and he found out about it, that's he's the one that really displayed the story of Jesus' birth in pretty good detail. All right, so anyways, Matthew chapter 2. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. "In Bethlehem in Judea," they replied. "For this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judea, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me, so that I may too go and worship him." After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. When they had gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. "Get up," he said, "take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to kill him." So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night, and left for Egypt, where he stayed until the death of Herod, and so was fulfilled what the Lord had said through the prophet, "Out of Egypt I called my son." When Herod realized that he had been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious. He gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years old and under, in accordance with the time he had learned from the Magi. Then what was said through the prophet Jeremiah was fulfilled. "A voice is heard in Ramah, weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children and refusing to be comforted, because they are no more." After Herod died, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel, for those who were trying to take the child's life are dead." So he got up, took the child and his mother, and went to the land of Israel. And when he heard that Archelaus was reigning in Judea, In place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. Having been warned in a dream, he withdrew to the district of Galilee, and he went and lived in a town called Nazareth. So was fulfilled what was said through the prophets, that he would be called a Nazarene. So there's actually quite a lot in this particular chapter to unpack, I would say. It's very interesting, just the different tidbits that you can really pick out of this that you may not realize as you read it. One of which is, obviously from the context of the whole chapter, Herod had no intention of worshiping Jesus. Instead, he wanted to take his life, so there was no threat to his throne. Which, if I recall, my lessons from Herod is not uncommon. King Herod was, as far as I know, quite paranoid about his rule, and would even threaten those within the royal court if he felt like they were trying to usurp him. Now, let's see here. Another thing I find interesting is this is where the traditional story of the Magi following the star is. But if you study what the actual Bethlehem star is, it was I don't remember the specific word for it, but it was the combination of a star and two planets, I believe, coming together, lining up, and creating this bright light. And through astronomy, you can actually find the Star of Bethlehem and the exact time that it occurred. Likewise, interesting tidbit, if you hadn't heard or you didn't notice, in 2015, summer of 2015, I think it was like the end of June, beginning of July, the Star of Bethlehem had reappeared after 2,000 years, mostly over America, if I recall correctly. I don't remember how long it was available, but that, you can kind of see how it wasn't, like a single star, but at the same time it created this really bright phenomenon as they came within like 2 degrees or less, I think it was, of each other. So that's something you can really look into if you want, and you can find that we can identify effectively the exact year Jesus was born based on just tracing his astronomy and coming to that star. Another thing that's interesting about the Star of Bethlehem is the timing, how long that star would have lasted. The Star of Bethlehem, I believe, was visible for a few weeks, I want to say. Leading up to the closest coming together, you can see it come close. I can't find the words. You'll have to forgive me. But the point is that the Star of Bethlehem, tying with Herod's, I think it's called the Massacre of the Innocents. He targeted children who were 2 years and under, right? But the star was effectively only recognizable for a few weeks. So what that means is that by the time Herod decided or found out that the Magi had deceived him, it had been not within like a day, as most of the stories might say. It was in the time frame of literally 2 years. Now, it might have been shorter than 2 years. It might have been 1 year, and he's just being careful. But the point is that he didn't want any chance for Jesus to live. And the timeline of that is a lot longer than many of the stories appear to say. So I would imagine, and I could be wrong, but I would imagine that Jesus and his family was actually in Bethlehem for an extended period of time before being warned to go to Egypt, effectively. So anyways, and then we see, Jesus goes to Egypt. They live there for a while, and then they come out and they go to Nazareth. Going further down. Oh yes, this is a pretty traditional lesson you'll see that they talk about in church, which is the gifts that the Magi give: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. The Magi actually understood the prophecies of Jesus and gave gifts appropriate. Now, I don't necessarily remember what frankincense is, but I know the purposes of the gold and the myrrh. So the gold, naturally, they recognized that he was going to be king of Israel, and so they gave gold as like a gift for his kingdom, for him as a king. But likewise, they also recognized, and this is a big difference from many of the Jewish leaders at the time, the Pharisees. They also gave myrrh because they understood that Jesus had to die, that he was going to die for his people, and so they gave myrrh out of respect for that, for the coming sacrifice that he would have to make. And so there's many times if you go to church and you hear about the Christmas story, they'll talk about the three gifts that's given to Jesus and what they mean, and how the Magi understood basically what Jesus's purpose was at this first run through on Earth. And then you can see Matthew is obviously pointing out fulfillment of what we call the Messianic prophecies here. Out of Egypt I called my son. You can see, well, you can't see here, but it references the point in the Bible where that prophecy comes from. This is Hosea 11. And then, a voice is heard in Ramah. That's Jeremiah 31. And so, yeah, I mean, Jesus is in Egypt for quite a while, long enough, in fact, for Herod to die. Herod dies of a disease, not of sedition or unnatural causes. I don't remember which disease, but it's historical. You can look it up. Yeah, Nazarene becomes Nazareth, and Jesus being called the Nazarene becomes relatively significant later on in Jesus' story, because just like Jesus being born in a manger, Jesus lives and grows up in a very humble location. Nazareth is kind of like the pit of Israel, as some people might say. And so God chose to have the Messiah, the King of Kings, to start in one of the worst places in Israel that he could start. Just like he was born in one of the most humblest places he could be born. And I think that's very interesting to kind of show that, you see this later on in the Bible. Jesus says, the first will be last and the last will be first. Well, guess what? Jesus started out last. He lived his life last, and now he's first. He's alive. He's the King of Kings, and I think it's interesting that God would choose the Messiah to start in the lowest of places in order to basically ascend to become the greatest of men. So, anyways, that's my run through of Matthew 2. It was actually a lot shorter than I thought it would be. So maybe, in fact, I would go to some speedrunning here.